living in right now.
Shaun King, one of the issues on the table is what the NAACP actually should do. Should it focus on a traditional civil rights agenda, on black economic empowerment? Really, what are we talking about? What do you want to see?
Well, I'm really hoping that that Ben Jealous will have a big say in kind of the future of the organization. And I think part of the problem has been in the past that if there are some expectations of the president and the president doesn't really have the giftings and the skill set to kind of lead in those areas, it can be a problem. He is not the traditional civil rights leader. And so I think if we're expecting that of him, that's going to be a big mistake. But, I'm hoping here over the next 2 or 3 months that they can really kind of put their heads together and identify some issues where he has strengths and can really lead with some courage and boldness.
Amani, he served as the head of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, and that's the Black Newspaper Publishers Association, and he helped create software that allowed dozens of publishers to put their newspapers online. Now, there's these new groups like the Color of Change that helped organize Gina 6, and they really use the internet well. Do you think Jealous has to do the same with the NAACP?
Well, I think that when you're looking at historic organizations, everyone is looking to how the internet can improve interactivity, help improve and increase activism, and really reach the audience, which is, of course, now going to the internet. So you would hope that his experience in doing so would be able to be applied to the NAACP, and perhaps they will be able to establish some sort of, whether it be developing some software or developing a very interactive website, something to really get the message out, to improve the image, and to get really not only younger people, but older people as well. Of course, we're not in the civil rights, what's thought of as the civil rights era, but there are definitely civil rights issues that all Americans are faced with these days. So you'd hope that he'd be able to take some of the issues and be able to attract and engage the community in the United States folks who live here.
I'm Farai Chidea, and this is News and Notes. Back to our Bloggers Roundtable. Joining me are Amani Channel, who blogs at myurbanreport.com, Shaun Williams, a blogger with DallasSouthBlog.com, and Shaun King, who blogs at ShaunInTheCity.com. So let's jump right back into our roundtable. New topic. In March, a 17-year-old high school football star named Jamil Shaw Jr. was gunned down and killed in Los Angeles. Many Angelenos marked and mourned his death, and the man who killed him is allegedly a gang member who was in the country illegally from Mexico. Now, the student's father, Jamil Shaw Sr., wants LAPD to change a policy called Special Order 40. It prevents the police from approaching people solely to find out their immigration status. Now, Shaun Williams, Mr. Shaw, has teamed up with an LA City Council member named Dennis Zine, a former LAPD officer, to try to change the law. So what do you think about that law, Special Order 40? Should it be changed?
Well, Special Order 40 probably should be revisited. If you have someone in custody and they have been accused of a crime, especially if they've been arrested, I don't see a problem with asking them about their citizenship. Unfortunately, in a case like this, it wouldn't have been helpful because the person who perpetrated the crime had been stopped in another city. So, even though he had been arrested, it wasn't in L.A. So, this is a broader issue, and I do think that Mr. Shaw's focus is positive. However, in the grand scheme of things, it's going to take a federal effort to really see real change.
Now, Shaun King, some people think this crusade comes out of tensions in South L.A. between blacks and Latinos. Could this justified crusade on Mr. Shaw's part actually make things tenser?
Yeah, I think it's doing that right now, and that's unfortunate. And, one of my fears is that Mr. Shaw, his issue is very real and very deep and personal, and people are starting to kind of use the death of his son as a political football. And the tensions, right now in Los Angeles are really at an all-time high. It hasn't been this bad in a long time. And so I think the discussion tends to not be a healthy discussion anytime we're talking about relations between black communities and Latino communities in Los Angeles. There's just so much tension there. I think something that I'm not hearing so much, though, is issues like this with an undocumented or an illegal immigrant committing this type of crime. I think, unfortunately, it also hurts all immigrants. And I'm not really hearing, that part of the discussion, because for me, if this crime had not happened, you would not have the current tensions at the level, that they're in right now. And so when undocumented immigrants kind of commit these kind of heinous crimes, I mean, killing a college-bound star athlete in the middle of the street, it ends up really being kind of a stain, and that's wrong, but a stain on the issues dealing with immigration. So it's complicated for sure.
Amani, should the crusade really be around gang violence and not about immigration?
Well, it seems to be two different discussions or two different conversations that need to be had, because let's say this suspect had committed a carjacking or was in some sort of credit card scheme that wasn't necessarily in that gang violence category. I mean, of course, you're still going to have victims. Would you have this crusade against this illegal gang member, which is, of course, how it's going to be stigmatized or stereotyped? There are larger societal issues that we have to look at in terms of the gang violence, the gang culture that exists in California and throughout this country, as well as how is this country going to address the issues that are related to illegal immigrants. I mean, we all know that illegal immigrants are making up a portion of some job categories in this country. So there is a need for them in that way. But of course, no one wants to be victimized by someone who's in this country illegally. So there are definitely more discussions that need to be had. I don't know how this Special Order 40, how it's really supposed to be applied. The way I understand it is that it prohibits officers from initiating contact just to find out a person's immigration status. So you could have a situation where police could be racially profiling Hispanics or anyone else for that matter, just on the sole purpose of, well, if this Special Order 40 gets done away with. So definitely a complicated issue. I feel for the families. Mr. Shaw and his family, of course, he has to do something, and he has no choice but to tackle it in this way. But there's just a lot of questions and a lot of issues that this whole subject raises.
Farah, this is Shaun King. My real agitation with this is, a lot of people in Los Angeles are saying, and you brought up just the issue of gang violence. It is true that 90% of the gun crimes and murders in Los Angeles are committed by people of the same race, but you can't tell Jamil Shaw Sr. that. I mean, had this man who's accused of killing his son not been in the country illegally, it's highly likely that his son would be alive right now. And so I think people are trying to divert the attention back to gang violence. Hey, that's a real issue, and that's something that should be getting tons of attention, and it does get a lot of attention. But the fact of the matter is, Jamil Shaw Jr. Would not be dead right now if the issue of undocumented immigrants was dealt with better in Los Angeles. And the city, in so many ways, kind of has a hands-off policy with undocumented immigrants. And I think because it's so complicated, people aren't really jumping in there to say, hey, how can we fix it? And ultimately, it hurts the black community because of this tension, and it even hurts immigrants, particularly in Los Angeles, when these types of crimes happen.
All right, guys, I'm going to have to move to a speed round. I'm going to ask you all the same question about our last topic. The state Supreme Court in California overturned a ban on same-sex marriage. Now, on the other hand, an initiative to amend the state constitution to ban gay marriage will probably qualify for the November ballot. Do you think this is going to become a hot political issue and possibly even get into the presidential race, a debate? Shaun Williams.
I think one reason why it won't take hold like it did in 2004 is because, number one, John McCain is not the true conservative that the Bush White House was, so I don't think that he's going to take the stand, as well as the three candidates who are left all have a very similar stance in the fact that they think that the states should make the decision. So because of that, I don't think that it'll be the same as 2004.
Amani?
Yeah, I don't see it as a big issue. Of course, you might have some conservative Christians that would like to see this issue addressed, but they're just far more important issues. I mean, we have a war that's going on that so many people are opposed with. The economy is just in the tank right now. There are just bigger issues, bigger fish to fry right now that hopefully our national leaders will be considering during this election campaign.
Shaun King?
I think it is going to become an issue. In 2004, the war was at a terrible point. And this issue still became kind of a hot-button issue that really swayed a lot of voters. And the question for me is, will McCain flip-flop? I don't think Barack Obama is going to flip on the issue. But at one point, McCain was for the tax cuts. He's against the tax cuts. He's for them. At one point, he was for talking with Hamas. Now he's against talking with Hamas. I think the X factor is, will the people that have McCain's ear encourage him to flip-flop on this issue? And if he does, I think they could begin to kind of use it as a wedge issue, not just with white voters, but with black voters as well. I mean, it's a very big issue in black communities around the country. And so if McCain flip-flops, it could be an issue.
All right, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Shaun Williams blogs for DallasSouthBlog.com. He joined me from Cake Mix Recording Studios in Dallas, Texas. Amani Channel blogs at MyUrbanReport.com, and Shaun King writes for ShaunInTheCity.com. Amani and Shaun King joined me from the studios of Georgia Public Broadcasting in Atlanta.